We're now live.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee held on Wednesday, the 15th of June, 2022. A warm welcome to members of the public who are joining us, as well as officers and senior members of the council. Thank you. Can I, before we start, and while Steve is just getting himself settled in, just say how delighted I was to be asked to chair what I think is one of two really important committees that this council operates. The other one being audit and member standards, because within those two committees we basically cover off everything that the council does. So it's really important that we play our part in overview and scrutiny to make sure that we are doing three things really. First of all, making sure that we have an inquiring mind. Secondly, that we become a critical friend to the cabinet and help them in what they're trying to do. And thirdly, look at what we can do to offer solutions, recommendations, and basically put ourselves in the shoes of our electorate as how would they think we should be doing things. So it's really important that we study and we get to understand the topics that are coming forward to us. Bearing in mind there's now only one committee, so the onus is on us to make sure that we cover up all those important issues that are going forward in the next 12 months. But more about that a bit later on. So we'll move on to apologies for absence, please.
Yes, Chair, we've received apologies from councillors Grange, Sylvester Hall, Latham and Little.
Any others? Can I also at this stage and in David's absence just pay tribute to David's chairmanship of this committee over the past 12 months. He took it over at a time when we were going through a transitional change of reducing committees down to one. Not an easy time. A few teething problems have emerged during that 12 months, but I just wanted to publicly on record thank David for his 12-month service. He would have been with us tonight, but he got trouble with his back, so he's giving his apologies. Anyway, thank you. So we'll move on then, if we can, to item 3, which is the declarations of interest, item 2. Okay. We'll move on to item 3, which is a minutes of the previous meeting. Has everybody had a chance to look at those and digest them? Are there anything that's not factually correct on those minutes? Or is it your wish that I sign them off?
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm with the chair.
Oh, you're move those. Of course. Thanks, Steve. All in favour?
Aye.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so we'll move on to item 4, terms of reference. We've done this in a sense just to make sure that we all understand what our terms of reference are on this committee and that we follow them wherever we possibly can. So it's my intention that we do go through them in some detail if we can, just to make sure that we're all happy of those and there's nothing that needs to be amended with them. So if we can go through them page by page, is that okay with people? So on the first page, so we're looking at page 7. Any issues on that page, anyone? Page 8. Happy. Page 9. Page 10. Page 11. Page 12. Page 13. Page 14. Page 15. Page 16. And then finally, page 17. Everybody okay? I think the only comment I would make on the final page, 21.3, reports developed by task groups. We need to make sure that they are reported into us here so that we can take that information and then we can discuss as a group whether or not we want to take those actions forward or whether we want to make any recommendations to change any of that before it goes forward as a report from this committee to cabinet. Is everybody okay with that? I think it really is important that those task groups report back into us at all times. Okay, lovely. Thank you. So we'll move on. So the next item, which is item 5, which is health matters. So as you all are aware, I now sit on the Health and Care Overview and Scrutiny Committee as your representative on the District Council. So I attended there in June, first meeting. I think a number of you had probably had an email in relation to the situation we had at the maternity facilities at Samuel Johnson. So I thought it was a good idea for me to sort of make a mark for us in this field and to raise that as an issue, which I did. And subsequently from that, it is actually on August's agenda to come back with a full report as to what are the issues and what is the likelihood of Samuel Johnson either coming back into use or not. I think the concern we had at the time was that I think certain parts of the facilities at Burton were under redevelopment, and therefore part of it are closed. And I think we did ask the question, would it not have been a good idea at that stage to reopen Samuel Johnson to at least make sure we got cover for our residents in this field at the time? This isn't something they did, but you can rest assured that we will make sure that we continue to push and press that item home. Councillor Evans.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it is an issue that I've raised before, because I am concerned that it is a midwife-led unit. It is not where doctors are, but midwife-led units are good units as long as it's a straightforward birth. So throughout this, there is the word transformation used. So I'd like some clarification when you go next time as to what you mean with transformation. Because I would not like to see the closure of this service, particularly as there are a lot of women that have straightforward births and therefore don't need to go to either Burton or wherever. And it is a distance for some people to travel. And when you're in labour, I would imagine it's not that funny to have to travel that distance. So I would like you to please keep your eye on that. I know a fair bit about midwife-led services because my granddaughter is a midwife, and so I've had quite long discussions with her. But I do think that it is a purpose-built place with 2 birthing pools, and it hasn't been used to the extent that it should have been. So would you please keep an eye on why and what on that unit?
Will do, yeah. And the other comments from anybody? The other thing to say is that on the 21st of June, we're having a session to look at the wider determinants going forward. So there will be an opportunity for us to make sure that we play our part in that, in making sure around the preventative part and keeping our residents healthy and fit and all the things that go along with that, that we can play our part as a district council in supporting that. And I know that Councillor England is on that committee, so I'm sure she will also be making sure that those issues that affect our residents in this district are brought to the fore at that time. Okay. You okay with that, everyone? Lovely. Okay, thank you.
Chair, are you going to, can I speak on other issues?
You can. Yes, can.
I wanted to speak on the George Bryan Centre because we know that's been going on for a long time. And again, the word transformation is used. Also, it's been rescheduled, this meeting, it says, from the 30th of May. I am concerned, and I've said this before, about mental health in schools, because children's mental health is a big issue now, and suicide in young men with papyrus helping people there. But I do think that that is a thing that can't keep being put on. So I would like you to ensure that you can get some answers there. As far as the George Bryan Centre goes, it was for mental health. It does really look, from what we've been told in the past, that it won't be in the future. But there are people that are concerned that there needs to be a mental health unit over that way, because there isn't one, and people have to access Stafford. And the other thing, I don't know, what do you know why the session has been
I don't.
rescheduled? Because
No. It was my first meeting, so I don't know why it's been rescheduled.
because it is a concern.
It is.
And I do think that we need to ensure that people are getting the support they need, because I know that camps in schools is not as effective as it should be. And there are a lot of children, particularly since COVID, that are going through a lot of stress.
Yeah. I think also because they're doing this new draft mental health strategy and health and care, I think it's probably been delayed because I don't think that strategy has actually been finished yet. That could be one of the reasons why it's not why it's been moved on the 30th of May. Councillor Robson.
Thank you, Chair. Just while we're talking about mental health support in schools, I know there is a big drive at the moment from a lot of education providers to increase the number of mental health first aiders in schools, which is something I'm sure we'd all applaud and all support. One query that has come through though is something I've noticed in the day job. There are a lot of mental health first aid courses out there which aren't necessarily being run by Mental Health First Aid England. So if that is something that's on the agenda, I think it's very well worth saying that if you're going to call somebody mental health first aid, you want to make sure they've got the appropriate training, and the gold star in that it does come from MHFA.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Can I?
Yes, you can come.
The work programme 22-23 on the women's health strategy. That's talks about a patient journey. Do you know anything about that? Because particularly now, it's the menopausal issues that need to be looked at very carefully now, and the government is saying that, and people are trying to push the government to do more towards women's health. So that is another issue. And also, when we look on the items that are for consideration from 21 and 22, the role of the community hospitals is important, and I think that there's going to be transformation there as well. But again, I think that the community hospitals, it is important, but are they going to be looking at those becoming community hubs or whatever they're called? So that's another issue I'd like you to keep an eye on. Thank you, sorry to go on, but
No, it's fine. No, it's important. No, I'll certainly raise all those issues for you, Councillor. Happy to report back on those. Anybody else got any health related issues they want to bring up this stage? No? Okay then, so we'll move on to item 6, which is the Corporate Peer Challenge 6-month review. Is there anybody actually speak on this, or do I need to invite you? Or... Ah, lovely. Thank you very much.
It's important to get the tablet on there now.
Well, yeah, that's all. Yeah.
Thank you. Get the domestic sorted.
Thank you.
Yes, we had our corporate peer challenge in November, and we were fortunate enough last 26th of May for the corporate peer challenge team to return to give us a bit of a stock take. They undertook assessments and interviews with key officers, members and partners that had been involved in the original corporate peer challenge in November, and took a sort of a litmus test really as to how far we progressed the plan, that members have a copy of an up-to-date version of the tracking that we're doing on this. The report that we got back was very, very comforting and complimentary in terms of how we'd reacted and responded to the issues that were raised, the fact that we'd accepted them and ensured that they were tracked and progressed very rapidly through to delivery in many cases, although appreciating there are still a couple of actions that we do need to work on throughout the rest of the year. In summary, they were very complimentary of the leadership that's being shown, the decisions that are being made in respect of the regeneration work, in terms of the organisational change programme that we're bringing about, and the response that we're having to the economic developments that we need to bring about to recover from the post-COVID from the COVID issues. So I know that you've had specific feedback, haven't you, from Councillor Bound as well, which may have been slightly more specifically tailored to the member side of things, but I think it's fair to say that Simon and I were very pleased with what came back, and the fact that they were very complimentary regarding learning what we've done and how we've gone about implementing it, because it's a model that has demonstrated that there is clarity amongst the workforce about what we're trying to achieve, and those that we're working with about the vision that we've set and how we're progressing towards it. So I think the only outstanding item that's flagged on the current action plan relates to our project management alignment. And that's just a recognition that we've got a couple of ways in which we run projects, and we needed to standardise that. So that work's now being progressed, following that being picked up by somebody who's given us some external support to help us bring all of that together. So at the moment, that's the only outstanding item, although we do have some stuff to progress towards the autumn. Happy to take any questions.
Lovely, thank you. So members, you've had the opportunity to see the 9 recommendations that are there, and the progress being made. You wish that we go through them page by page to get some sort of up-to-date information on those, on that work programme, or do you want to just pick out anyone particular that you want to look at or ask on? Should we go through page by page? Okay, so that we've got 1 and 2 on the first page, and Chris Sims has said already that on item 2, which is showing as amber, that they are moving forward. Do you know when that likelihood of that to be completed?
The officer concerned was away last week, so I believe they're progressing that now directly. So we should have a clarity around what process we're using in what incidents. It's basically linked to how big the project is and what sort of governance needs to sit around it. So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. We need to tailor our project management approach, which I think was something that the members of the peer challenge picked up, that we're just working through now in terms of what's the best practice, what's going to work for us, and what can we then train our officers in. So that piece of work is it will be picked up by that officer now.
Yeah, but on the page 23, there's reference to the SPI data, and I think that refers to strategic plan improvement date. There isn't an explanation of that. It's not referred to in that main section. So just the what the SPI data is.
Yeah, I believe it's the social progress imperative. I think that's what it's all like SPI there.
Yes.
I believe that, so this is the around 50 data points which we're collecting and assembling through social progress imperative through a company who are creating a dashboard for us to be able to use as councillors, and we'll open that data up for anyone within the district who think it may be of use. I think certainly be of use to use that around this table. And we've got the first cut of that data available now for us to review. It needs a little bit of refining, I think, to make it more fit for purpose, but Simon, I think, put timelines on that will be ready.
Thank you, Chair. No, so that's happening now. So we, as the leader has said, the social progress index, the SPI, is 50 indicators of well-being currently at a ward level. Our ambition over the next year or so is to create 2 additional layers on top of that to give us more intelligence at what is called the middle super output area level, which is in between a ward and a district, and at the district level. So the 50 indicators, we can now compare ward to ward to see what well-being is looking like and how that's different across the district. As the leader said, there's a little bit of work to do to finesse a couple of the indicators, which we will complete in the next 4 to 6 weeks or so. And we're now starting to use this data as the foundation stone for the development of the next strategic plan.
Okay. I was going to say, and I assume when that data is collected and done at a ward level, then ward members will be able to see that and utilise and use that in their own day-to-day work.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It should be on the website as well, so that residents can also see what well-being looks like across the district.
Councillor Robson.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I don't want to make criticism of everybody, but I know I think a lot of times there's a lot of data made available to us as councillors. My background, my experience, I'm very good with numbers. I'm quite happy to throw them around and sort of look into them. Have we made any thoughts, or have we progressed anything, essentially talking about whether we need any member training on how to manipulate these data sets, and particularly comparing the idea of a medium super output area, which do not in any way, certainly in Lichfield, in any way follow anything near the wards. And I mean, one of the ones in Lichfield, the centre of it is outside of it, which is always interesting. So yeah, if we're not looking at that, can we make sure that we're speaking to council MPs about hopefully
Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Just through Councillor Robertson, is this on? Training, absolutely something we discussed last week, actually. So and it will become more evident once you're able to look at it and to drill down into the data. But it groups it by themes, and you can look across a whole range of different criteria right across the district or at ward level. But what's really important for us as members is to know what we might be talking about education, we might be talking about all sorts of different matters, but we need to know what the data sets that underpin that are, because actually it doesn't quite give you that level immediately. So there will absolutely be a training session or more involved in understanding what data is building in that picture and how to use it and how not to use it as well.
Has this company done it for any other local authority that we know of?
Yes, Chair, they did it for the London Borough of Barking and Dagenham, which has now had the SPI for about 5 years or so. So they're able to track trends over that period of time. And Barking and Dagenham won a series of awards for that work. So we are simply working very closely with Barking and Dagenham to make sure that we learn the lessons that they learn and benefit from the progress they've made.
Good. No, that's good. Anything else on that, please, anyone? No. We'll move on to the second page then, which is the third item. Anything there at all? On to the next page. The next page is forward, which is anything there? These ones that have been completed, so historical information. Item 5. Yeah, mentioned the train there, isn't it? Yeah. Item 6, the plan. Item 7, communication and engagement strategy. Anyone?
Just say that obviously these are the local government slogans, phrases, and so on here. Deliver community power strategy, develop full stakeholder engagement. Deliver full stakeholder engagement, it needs to be in plain English and the way that Councillor Robertson has suggested, really, so that people can understand it and use it, both members and the public generally. So hopefully that will be happening as we progress this. So I understand why it's in this form, but hopefully it'll be in a form that is understandable for most people. Obviously, I don't need that, but you know, I might look at it if you do it. So that would be important, I think. Thanks.
Okay. Item 8 and 9 on that final page. Okay, comfortable with that? Yeah. Okay. Report in the whole. That's normal.
Just before that, just making sure we got capacity, because I was saying to Tim the other day, every time I email an officer, they've gone. Normally they've gone, retired, left, no explanation, just disappeared. Some months ago, I didn't even know about them. Meeting date was still in my diary. Only one officer recently is not gone yet, so I was obviously goodbye to him. So I'm just worried about capacity. For example, on the enforcement, we had the briefing paper on the enforcement, and there's a 65% increase in enforcement queries, including some of my own. And we're not fully up to capacity there, but I did email an officer only to say that somebody else was dealing with it, but then later on he'd retired, and then the other officer that was dealing with it wasn't there anyway. So I've got another officer now, but I do think we need some sort of up-to-date chart of who is still left in this organisation. There are fewer and fewer now whose names I know. Some here tonight, no doubt. So that would be very helpful. I do want to ask that question about capacity to deliver on the better council projects. That's really what I'm making.
Obviously, the Being a Better Council project is a series of 14-15 projects, and we track that on a weekly basis. So we have project boards every fortnight that cover the two main areas of better equipped and then better led and better performing, which have now merged into a single project stream due to the completion of a number of those projects. So the capacity for those types of projects are contained within the programme, and we're very closely monitoring that and have resourced that appropriately with the funding that was approved in November. So in terms of day-to-day, obviously as a result of some of the aspects of being a better council, and as a result of general churn within the labour market that I think we aren't the only council that are experiencing at the moment. There are a number of vacancies at the moment, and some of that is strategic. For those of you who've looked at our employment committee, you will be aware that we are looking to consolidate roles and to exit a number of roles from the establishment to ensure that we have a sustainable number within the workforce going forward to maintain within our budgetary envelope. So our funding gap needs to be resolved. Our revenue pressures are not going away. So there's only so much that we can do to cover those. So we do need to be consistent about how we're progressing that. So there are going to be a couple of vacancies whilst we're going through that change project, which we're hoping to have completed by and large by the end of July for implementation by the end of September. We have 2 assistant directors that will be coming on board in August that have been successfully recruited following the initial changes that we discussed in March at Employment Committee. So they will significantly increase the capacity that we have at the levels that members will be engaged at, and hopefully from there on in we will have a robust platform to rebuild the structures that sit underneath them to deliver all of the expectations that members have on our day-to-day services.
You say you still got Tracy Tudor on the chart, so if you go to the link, who's doing that job now, the better equipped job advisor?
Sorry, Chair, so I'm leading on that part of the Being a Better Council programme now myself directly.
Thank you.
Chief Executive, in the programme, do you envisage, we've got a number that you would end up being in relation to people employed in the council? Have you has that sort of been mapped out as to what is the minimum that you think you're going to need to be able to deliver the services, or you just sort of, as you go along, identify those jobs that are no longer required in the organisation?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think it's going to be the latter of those two. I think we're going to iterate the structure over the next year or two, to be honest. But the bulk of the changes Christy has set out, and we expect to complete by about September this year. So change is a challenging thing to achieve. Organisations going through change experience the same type of anxiety, concern, and some people will choose to exit the organisation and rather than be part of that change. And so this is the natural progress which I've seen in a number of roles I've fulfilled over the last 20 years or so. But again, as Christy said, we see the end of the tunnel approaching rapidly now. I think, as I say, once we get people into the right roles from about September onwards, then I expect the organisation to settle again and to start to perform better than it currently does.
Perhaps that'll be a good time when that's completed for you to perhaps bring a report back to this committee so that we can actually see what the structure is now. And if you can, please, that'd be good. Councillor Egan, do you want to come in?
No, my question's been answered by Christy, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on that for anyone at all in relation to?
No, you've done it.
Yeah, we'll keep a watch fire. Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome, Councillor Little. Good to see you. Thank you very much. Okay, well, shall we?
How did he get in with that, Mr. Putnam?
Well,
Quietly.
say no more. Okay, shall we move on to the next item, which is item 7, which is the councillor community. Whether councillor public member wants to join us or not is entirely up to him if he would like to. The one thing I will say before, while Councillor Cox is getting into his chair, I think going forward, we need to ensure that we do as much work as we can within the committee rather than always looking at setting up task groups, because I do think we have a responsibility as a committee set up to deal with some of the items, and this is the case in question. And I want to thank Councillor Eagland for chairing the first of the task group to deal with this, but that will be the one and only to do with this, because I think this in particular can be dealt with by this committee. We can have all the evidence, we can take it forward, we can give any recommendations or best practices that we think might be good going, taking it forward back to the cabinet, rather than having a task group go away and look at it. I don't think we always will need to do that. I think we have capacity within this committee to deal with that. So that brings us nicely on to the council community fund. Councillor England, do you want to make any comment on the notes that you
Not really.
did from the meeting?
I'm looking at the meeting that took place, and it was a very good discussion. We had Councillor Cox there acting on 2 roles. One is a literary district councillor elected member, and a cabinet member. And I think at the end of the day, the end of the meeting, it was decided that, as you've just said, this is task groups are not always the good thing. It's a matter of involving everybody in overview and scrutiny to get a level platform going. So I think this meeting that took place, we aired our thoughts, if you remember rightly, and the problems with the community funding. Did everyone get these minutes?
I think we've had the briefing.
Oh,
paper,
well,
haven't
then you
we?
don't
And
need me
the
to
note-
elaborate.
the
then,
notes.
if you've had them.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
notes
we've
are-
had, there is a pack, the
Okay.
agenda pack, yeah.
That's
brilliant.
fine. So you've got all that, the notes. Christine, Christine, very confidently took these minutes. So no, I don't need to make any more comments if the council have got this. That's the main thing.
Okay, well, let's do some delving into this then. Let's have some thoughts on how we think it's running. My understanding it is for a second year, it's a 2-year pilot, so it's going ahead anyway, but we just want to see in ways in which we can make it better, improve it, look at how others do it perhaps, or issues that we've had or experienced. So who wants to kick it off with any thoughts on it to begin with? Councillor Evans.
Councillor Cox will know that I actually did spend all my money, and I was concerned that on the actual list, the first list that came out, it wasn't included. I spoke to Councillor Cox. He said he got it sorted for me, but it still doesn't appear. It looks as though I only spent half the amount of money that I should have done, and I can't understand why on this other list that I am not on there properly listed as having spent all that money. So he will confirm that, and I hope that can be rectified.
I think there is some delay in the actual data getting back probably to us from the people who are administrating it from the Staffordshire Foundation. Is that right, Councillor?
Yeah, if I may, Chairman, Councillor Evans is quite right. There was a spend, and following my investigations and authorisation, it would be paid to the Boney Hay Scouts. It hasn't been updated here, but with the final balance that we have in the pot, I'm confident that it should have been paid. I don't know whether they have contributed to that fact, but the balance which was raised at full council last is 933.72, which would indicate from the previous calculations that has indeed been paid, although it hasn't been updated.
I would like it updated.
Yeah.
Councillor Robertson. I think Councillor Cox put his microphone on.
Thank you, Chair. I've got quite a few on this. Before I jump into them, I think you can broadly split them into kind of two categories. One, kind of looking at where we are now and immediate improvements, and then one on longer term. Do you want to just focus on the first type now and circle back?
Yeah.
So I think these are all quite quick fire. So do you want me to go through in threes? Yeah. I think one of the most astonishing things in this entire document pack is the councillor unaware that if they're a trustee of an organisation, then they have a pecuniary interest in relation to that organisation, and therefore should not approve any public spending towards them without having somebody else look into it. That's an astonishing admission from a member who clearly hasn't familiarised themselves with the code of conduct, and I think that's something that needs to be picked up. Alongside that, I think there's one of the first things we need to look at is kind of increasing the number of organisations which are precluded. So I think we need to make it very clear on all the documentation that goes out to members that you cannot fund an organisation which appears in your register of interests. But, I mean, that's clearly a pecuniary interest and it shouldn't be happening, but I think we need to make that absolutely clear, because there have been some examples where that may or may not have happened, or registers of interest weren't updated to reflect the impression. I think that we need to clear up on that. I think there's a concern about funding parish councils. Parish councils obviously have uncapped precept; they can go up and down as much as they want. The idea that we're going to take money that we precepted, with the difficulties we have around our precepts and the limits that the government put on it, and then subsidise a parish council. That just seems totally nonsensical to me, and I think parish councils should be excluded for this. The same with funding for schools or other kind of publicly funded statutory bodies. There's a funding stream from the government for that. I don't see that it would necessarily be appropriate for a council to pass that on. It seems that it just doesn't add up in my opinion. Obviously PTAs and things like that are voluntary organisations. I think that they're actually a perfect type of organisation for this type of grant. But I think particularly schools, that's very difficult. That's the last I've got on those. I don't know if you want to take those or do you want to carry on, Councillor Clark?
In terms of the pecuniary interest, from the draft, it was changed with the paper that went out when we launched it, and there was an update to that. I'll take it on board for sure, because I think it has raised concern. But at the time, I felt that, you know, councillors doing a role are involved with many groups and organisations. And it could be that what you may be doing is excluding those organisations. So whilst I appreciate that in terms of a pecuniary interest, is the councillor actually beneficial of the funds going to it, or is it the group or the in question that is applied that actually is for the benefit of that group as a whole? So I felt that if we're not careful, we actually, and I'm sure we all know that we are involved with other groups and so forth, either as trustees or committee members and so forth. And I just felt that it may be that the individual was not going to get benefited personally, but the group that they happen to be sitting on would be. So that is why, but I will look into that and take further counsel.
Okay. Had you finished, Councillor Ross, or have you got?
The other one was funding parish councils. Again, I think it was in there already. I can take your point, and we can look at that going forward. Sorry, the third one, I thought it was, I don't have written those two. So what was the third one? Sorry.
It was a similar question about parish councils for schools.
With the schools, well, it's the same principle would be on that. Thank you.
Thank you for those. And just, I completely understand and respect where you're coming from in terms of actually, if a council is already working with a community group, you don't want to exclude them. I know I did ask for this before the fund was rolled out. It wasn't taken on by the previous cabinet member to say, actually, is there a way we can build in an escape? So, because I'm aware I'm involved with some groups, actually, can we have something written in where if one of the groups that I'm involved with says, oh, this grant will work for that, I can say, well, I can't approve that. I pass it either to yourself or to another councillor and just basically assure there is that line there. I think there's a workaround to not include groups and keeping it.
I may agree. I think in defence of the previous cabinet member, I amended the paper that he would not have seen. So that was down to totally me. I do actually agree that perhaps the cabinet member should then come back to them on those particular instances, just to obviously oversee it. That is what I am saying. If I was to say the county council, well, we would approve, it then goes to an officer and it also goes to a cabinet member for approval. Cabinet member, then an officer. So we can look at that for you.
Chairman, can I, let me just
Thank
you. And just if it helps, and I'm sure Councillor Robertson, just for the matter of the minutes, wouldn't have wanted to mislead the committee on anything, and be really clear about our definitions around pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests. I'm not aware that any councillor has made any awards to any organisation where they have declared a pecuniary interest. That is where they stand to make financial gain from those interests. It may have been where they have non-pecuniary interests, where they sit as a trustee, etc., of an organisation. Fully understand there's still an argument, quite rightly, an argument to be had around whether or not the appropriateness of that. But certainly, just there are no awards been made where councillors have pecuniary interest, which would be quite and wholly wrong, and I'm sure Councillor Robertson did not want the committee to think that.
Come back down.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bullen. I was actually quoting from the minutes of the task group, where a member had said that if they were a trustee, they were unsure what the process was.
Excellent, yeah, well, they've got a non-pecuniary interest.
I mean, clearly, it shouldn't be a grey area, but obviously it is a grey area for our councillors in knowing exactly whether they have an interest or not. So whether or not we think about it going forward, that we do some sort of briefing or some sort of training event so that we can, we could do it over an hour or so, just to make sure that everyone is aware what they can and can't do. And if need to, have a point of contact that they can come back to at the council to say, actually, is this correct? Can I do this? Because we all want to make sure that we're doing it correctly, and we don't want to fall foul of any of the regulations in doing that. So it may well be that that can be done as a briefing session, just so that councillors are aware of exactly what they are able to do and not. You members think that would be a good way forward?
Common sense would have come into it somewhere, Chairman.
That will be a recommendation we go back to cabinet with. Dave, did you want to move, council officer, do you want to move on to your next set of questions?
I am coming towards the end now. I think I've only got
Okay.
four relatively quick ones. The first couple is around ensuring the councillors don't go over. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I messed my maths up. I saw a 6 and read it as a 5 because my handwriting is atrocious. So I actually awarded £310. I have before now and will continue to make that offer that if required. I'm more than happy to repay the district council that value. But that's an error on my part. In this case, it was £10. If that can happen for a tenner, you're just a little bit concerned. I think that's something we need to maybe pick up on. And particularly alongside that as well. I know the previous time we discussed this at committee, one of the committee members mentioned that one of the groups had been able to make an application to their fund without their consent, which is obviously really worrying and concerning, and that's something that we need to start. I don't know if that's maybe a conversation that we could have with the Community Foundation on. So those two, I suppose, they kind of run together. And then the next two is just kind of IT solutions. I know when applications came into me, they were going into my junk folder, despite the fact they were coming from an LDC email address. So I don't know if we can get the IT boffins to just set a blanket situation on all of our email accounts that all LDC emails are definitely not junk because it's coming from within the organisation. And then the second, I know another councillor had a problem where, because there'd been a completely understandable error when their email address had been put into the system here, there was a space before their email address, which meant when the system was trying to email it was trying to email an email address which included an incorrect character, which meant they didn't get any applications for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. So again, can we just put something in place to ensure that kind of doesn't follow through? And my final point on the immediate fixes. Again, I did speak to officers while the process was ongoing. There isn't an option for all Lichfield councillors. Now, you can apply to several councillors from several wards because some projects go across wards. But actually, there's lots of things, lots of groups that operate across the city. You can't apply to 15 councillors. There's lots of things that happen across Burntwood. You can't apply to all the Burntwood.
The system won't let you do that, you said.
So what we can do is, I mean, one of these was one of the grants that I awarded was Lichfield Lions Club, where thought that they wanted to bid for £900 across 15 councillors is 60 quid each. And when they went in to try and do it, they're limited to 6 councillors.
Okay.
So in the end, they applied to 6 councillors for 60 quid. I think we all approved it because it was a really good grant. But I think there's a potential there that we might be able to do something, particularly for Lichfield and Burntwood, because there are a lot of organisations that operate across Burntwood. But again, there's, depending on how you slice it up, 12 or 14 councillors in Burntwood. So whether that's something we can do as kind of IT solution, which would allow potentially more of us to fund more groups and spread things out a little bit better.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to
Councillor
comment
Egan,
on that comment that's just been made. You see, if I got an invitation for this money that we've just been talking about, I would report to say, I've got my division before I start sharing my money out. And so what I do, and I would explain that I would wait until the end of the period, and if I've got any surplus in my account, then I would then donate it, and I leave it in abeyance until the end of the term, when the money comes to an end. Then I would get in touch. But my first thoughts are for my own division first.
thank you. Yeah.
Or ward.
Yeah,
yeah.
sorry, yeah.
Absolutely. I think some of the things you raise there, Councillor Robertson, are really important, but I don't think they're insurmountable. They can't be sorted through with the foundation, Councillor Cox. And this business about being able to spend more than you've got, you just thought there must be some trigger point that says, actually, no, you can't do that because you've already reached your maximum spend. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming there must be something you'd have thought that could be in place to do that.
Not being able to count 300 properly might entitle me to a significant refund on my physics degree.
Quite possible.
But I'll talk to the university.
Yeah. You okay, okay. So we've got the third one. Councillor Norman.
Just on the last point, there's something red flashing on the screen would be an obvious way of stopping the overspend, but that's just maybe a technical issue there that I can't deal with. I was going to go through the issues and the outcomes. That's what it's all about. But what can't be funded, and there's bullet points in the original 2021 document. I won't have to refer to. I'm just going to quote two of them, which is projects or activities of the statutory responsibility of other public sector organisations. In the case of parish council, that can be difficult. There's not a lot that's statutory there. So like one of them is a bench there. That's certainly not a statutory service of a parish council, but it's clearly one that would benefit. And then the last one is the council cannot, this is what can't be funded, as we said originally. A council cannot fund a group or activity if they or a member of their close family are a trustee of the organisation applying for funding. I only mention that because that's what's in the original document, and we're going to look at, we're going to look at that. Now, the key issues that came out of the survey of members were, the first one about picking up the email. I certainly had that problem with where the emails were and eventually found them. And
they're your junk as well.
Yeah, because it was just, there's not, I'm trying to get rid of all. Well, the junk is the other one, and other is what I tend to avoid most of the time. But anyway, that's something to be looked at and sorted. And this is on page 34, the issue, sorry.
Yeah.
Concerns about the decision resting with the members not wanting more officers support. Well, I think that can happen sometimes. I think the onus was on members to actually do a bit of work for this £300 that we've granted. Some members found promoting the scheme identifying groups a challenge. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, in the case of Paisley, for example, there was actually no money at all given by either of the two district councillors. Get a quick look at the Paisley website and agree for this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's about 25 different groups, little organisations here that they could have actually inquired about whether you want some money. And normally, if you say to a little group, you want some money, they normally say that yes. In my case, I was called it quite early on, but the other two about to chase a little bit. But that's down to members to try and communicate that. The fourth bullet point about the communication issues to the community foundation, again, that's picked up again, and that's hopefully something that we'll be looking at. Then others, another point was made here, not by me, but that organisation could apply to We Love Litchfield. But I mean, there's other applications, which was on the website, I think, for the district, about other ways of getting funding. Wasn't big enough with town council. And the last one, the community foundation experienced challenges getting the payment details from some groups, and that's true. They got hold of me to get hold of the one of the groups that was asking for that. And so, in the outcomes from the task group that took place, that there's suggestions there on. I think that's on page 60 of the. It's 60. Anyway, see, it will be test group.
Yeah.
There will be a question on the application form stating if the council knows knew and we're okay with the application. Okay, American there, but it might. There'll be an option for councillors to declare if they have involvement in the project activity, which we just touched on with the trustees, I think. That the application form includes payment details for the applicant to speed up getting funding paid. So that addresses that problem earlier on, that issue. That community donations with other ward councils will be highlighted more on the form and in communications about the scheme. That's also important, I think. That all successful will be given with the details of the applicant's purpose and the council awarding it continue to be published to give full transparency. I certainly support that, as we know from the county council, lack of transparency and a particular project there. And then the future actions on page 35 now, the other one, which is review the application form, set up email reminder acknowledgements, look at options to support members' communication with Community Foundation, look at the inclusion of bank details and on the application form and assess future viability of the scheme. I think all those things are good. I think I get the impression members have been listened to, the issues that we raised, and it was a pilot project, okay? It'll be a pilot project year 2, and hopefully be sorted by the end of that year. So all those things are taken on board and actually acted upon, and the cabinet member is supportive of them. I think we can make it better than it was. It wasn't that bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's disappointing. There's only 21 respondents, which is disappointing to start with. But overall, if you look at the percentage of people that thinks that changes could be made to the scheme, 81%. So I think all the things that you've said, Councillor Norman, are things that I'm sure will be taken on board and put in place going forward, so that we get to a scheme that covers all everybody accurately going forward. Do we also do a sample at any stage, or does the foundation sample any of the applications? Do we know? So that again may well be a way in which we could just do a sample of the applications that we get through a 12-month period, just to make, or a 6-month period, just to make sure that we're not falling into any sort of areas that we would not see until the end of the year, potentially.
I think this scheme, when it was came forward, that it would be that kind of follow-up wouldn't possibly would be necessary in terms of the follow-up on small grants. It's something we can certainly look into, and I was certainly aware of the overspend, for example, on Councillor Robinson's. £10, and Leanne at Community Foundation used her, how can we say, she looked at it and thought, well, £10 isn't an issue, but I can tell you that from example where I had awarded £150 to the Kings Bromley show, to be immediately told, Councillor, you haven't got any funds.
Right.
And what had happened there was that we had Councillor Binney's over unspent, and it was agreed that it was fair to, obviously, rather than the ward be bereft of £300, that I would authorise that kind of expenditure. And Councillor Marshall and I split it. And of course, that hadn't been fed through to the Community Foundation. But £150, I can assure you, was picked up as not having sufficient funds. If that is helpful to you.
Thank you for that clarification. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the Community Foundation were aware that they paid over by £10 then,
Yes.
without
They-
Councillor Robertson contacting them?
No, the application had gone in £10 over, and I think it was also Councillor Ball had done the same, exactly the same. And they saw it come in and felt that it was £10, knowing that there was money left because we'd already had declarations of people not wanting to spend it at all, and they took that decision. Now that I can pull up and say no, it's got to be zero, and I'm quite happy for that to be done. So there is no overspend.
I understand where their sentiment comes from, but I think there should be zero. I don't think we should be spending any more for anyone, because if 47 of us did that, that's 470 quid. So I would say to the foundation, no, we don't want anyone to exceed the amount that they've got. That would be my view. Everyone agrees with that. We need, yeah. Councillor Trent.
Thanks. I just wondered if there's one or two councillors that don't want to, can you hear me?
No. Do you want to put your microphone on and start again?
Yeah.
Thank you.
If there's one or two councillors that don't want to spend any of the 300, then can it not be put in place that there is more funds available? So you know, if you've got more organisations you want to help and you haven't got enough money to go around, then can't we utilise that money instead of just leaving it?
Before I bring you in, Councillor Cross, count the 8, and then there you go, count the 8.
Yeah, I've got written down here that if there is an underspend, that possibly we could maybe give that money to Wheeler Litchfield or somebody like that, and then at least we know it's going
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Councillor Trent, do you want to come back before we go to Councillor Cox?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but personally, the idea is to give it to little groups that don't have any money or little money. And We Love Lichfield does a fabulous job, but I think that the money in that should be spent on what we intend it to be spent on.
Okay, so you, councillor.
Can I just come in on that? I understand councillor Trance's sentiment. But we're talking about £300 if it was a £300 across 45 councillors. And there'll be, I wouldn't wish to obviously preside over which group should get it. I have looked at the view of the underspend of 933, and I feel what we should be doing is looking at the end of the pilot scheme of next year and see what then underspend is left and see what then total we have underspend, and then we will evaluate it how that would be spent. I take on councillors the 80s point of We Love Lichfield. I'm keen to highlight the We Love Lichfield brand anyway going forward, and they do also reach out to small groups. I grant you that they don't grant to those groups without constitutions, but otherwise they would take small grants available. But to open up a small amount of money to the number of councillors that are interested in the scheme would be very problematic, and I wouldn't like to preside over it, who would then gain and who would not gain, because that would be unfair.
Councillor.
Yeah, on the note of underspend, to say after a pilot scheme how much we have left goes to a certain organisation, I think creates a very bad image, because we're going to choose one over another, and another's going to say, why did you go to that one? So I think it places all councillors in a difficult position. But also I would say that, although I don't agree with the position, if a councillor on a political judgment does not want to enter into the scheme because they want the money to go back into Lichfield's coffers to be used elsewhere internally, that's their political decision. To say that if they don't use it, it will go to an organisation they haven't approved, I think it's a gross misconduct of fund. Because by not using it, it will be then default going to someone that they don't approve, because it has been allocated to a specific council to be used in a specific ward. And I think if there is an underspend, it goes back into Lichfield District Council's coffers and is unused.
What do you know off the top of your head, councillor, what the underspend this year?
Yes,
Sorry.
not from the top of my head, I've got it down.
Lovely.
£933.72.
Which has gone back into.
Which is held with the pot.
20 minutes, yeah.
It is the 72 pence.
£72.
Okay. Anybody else? Ashley. Sorry, Councillor Yates, not Ashley. Sorry.
Right, okay. I am Ashley and I'm.
I know, but I was formally right.
So that's fine.
Councillor
No, I was
Yates.
just going to say, it is a pilot scheme. I've heard what everybody said, and I think, you know, we've got the first year's gone well. There's been some hiccups. We knew there'd be some hiccups. There'd been a few little things, a lot of things that Councillor Robertson said are in the report. They're aware of the issues. They sorted the issues. So I you know, well done to the officers involved and to the community foundation. And it can only get better. What I was hearing, really the ward issue, the idea is that it does go down to each individual ward, and I think we should keep that, because you have got certain people that maybe don't live in their ward that they represent, so they might feel that they want to help somebody that's more local to them. I'm sure that would never happen, but so that way you are looking after your ward. I think I'd like to keep it that way if we could. Read the trustee thing that I'm hearing. Again, the idea of this initially was that we found new people, and if there's a trustee sitting on something that is close to their heart, yeah, possibly that they might be guided by their heart rather than their head. I'd like to think that they'll find somebody new. I'd like to see that people aren't giving money to the same organisations the next year, next financial year, and that they're going out to new organisations and new people. And I think there's a line in there somewhere that says that we've helped out a lot of people with small things, and we've made some big differences. And that was, to read that was great, because that was the plan initially. And so I just hope it can carry on. And in 12 months' time, we can have a debrief again and make it better for the following year.
Anybody else? What? And any comments before I sort of sum up where we are? Anybody else? So basically, Councillor Cox, at the end of the second year, we would expect to have this sort of similar thing come back to us as a full review on how wonderful the scheme has been in the second year. I think if we can make sure we pick up all those areas that came back through the survey of ways in which we can improve it, I think telling the foundation that we don't want any overspends at all, whatever the reason. And then just try to encourage members to use the scheme. You know, the scheme is there to help in your community. So I think whatever we can do to make that happen. And finally, maybe some sort of training session or a briefing paper for members so they know exactly what pecuniary interests are or not, and so they don't fall foul, and that if they have got any doubts or reservations, somewhere they can call or contact to give them some sort of advice. Is that yeah, so a lot of that within the task group notes, so it's all within that. Are you happy for us to take that forward, the task group recommendations, do that and pass on? And the issues that we've gotten formally pass that back to cabinet. Are we all happy with that? Yeah, we're all happy, show, yeah. So we can see that we can on an item such as this do it in a committee system. We don't need to be going out and having a task group set up, do we, Vice Chair?
Well, no, but I
Vice
would
Chair?
like to say that with task groups, you can actually talk to people on the ground, and therefore, in confidence, for them to tell you how the situation is, not how the directors say it is or how they believe it is, because on the ground it might be that they can't do this job because they don't get the equipment. So task groups do have a benefit, and you can get to a lot of detail, and people can speak there. I just may say many years ago, we had the police, one of the police at the committee meeting at the county for the two Fred. And the two Fred, apparently, because the previous chair who had them, sort of they felt a bit put out, which is hard to believe. I know, but there you are, that's it. I explained that wouldn't be how it would be happening. It wasn't about police matters, it was about school and policing, and managed to get them there. But there are times when task groups will work.
Yes.
And I'm sure you're not saying that they're
No,
terrible and everything, are you? And
not as many words in that. No, I'm not saying that at all.
But no, I agree,
Yeah, there are going to be instances where we do need to have task groups, obviously, but what I want to try and get to the point is that where we can deal with something in a committee system like we have here and come to a set of recommendations and actions, then we should be doing that, because you know that's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
We're not just here to pass on things to somebody else to have a look at. We're here to actually help the cabinet, help the council go forward. Okay. Councillor Yates,
No,
you're going to
I'm going to agree and say I think we take each individual item, and if we feel there's a desperate need for a task group, then we'll do it. But we've been entrusted to do this job, so let's do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And of course, when we go through the work programme and look at what are the areas that we want to come to this committee, again, we'll have the opportunity to say, do we think it wants a task group or does it not want a task group? So we'll have that opportunity to make sure that we cover all bases whenever we deal with that. So, Councillor Cox, so you're happy with all that come from that, and good luck with year two, and we will see you when you come back and give a full report on how successful it's been.
Yeah, more than happy to confirm. I hope to mid-July launch the next year of it, running to the 30th of November. That will also give people chances of organising perhaps a Christmas occasion. So that's the plan. Thank you very
and
much.
let's make sure that it is advertised well. Let's make sure that everywhere knows about what we're doing, so that it gets to as many people as possible.
Just to add that comment, that we did do a poster towards the end of it to try and G it up. By the time it got sorted, it was too late. But we will revamp that poster,
change the date,
change the date,
and
not say, here's your check. It's the new year. So hopefully that will help councillors as well along the way.
Councillor Cox, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item, which is the Economic Prosperity Strategy Action Plan. So we welcome the two officers and Councillor Edie to the table. Good evening, gentlemen. Good to see you.
Good evening, Chairman and Committee. Thank you, Collins.
Pleasure.
Just for the benefit of Councillor Frost, who I know is also a fairly new member, just because you don't review this young gentleman. Oh, he's swapped seats. We are right now. The young gentleman is Jonathan Percival, who's our Economic Development Officer. If you didn't know who he was, and you will have seen David before. very much tonight, committee, I'm looking for your input, because I know there is a wealth of experience sat around the room in terms of people who work in businesses, run businesses, help businesses, and very much I would like your input tonight in terms of what's in front of you, particularly around Appendix 1. What you'll see in Appendix 1 is a suggestion of actions that we could look to take as local authority, either ourselves or in partnership with others, that we hope would obviously drive forward prosperity in the district. You may have views on these. You may feel that they're not right. You may feel that things are missing. So very much I'm looking for your voice tonight in terms of if there's anything that you think we're going down the wrong path, or there's things that you think is missing and we should be looking at. So obviously what you've got in the report is setting out a picture for actions that we would expect to take in 12 months. So if I could jump to the end, Chairman, obviously I would expect you to require us to come back in 12 months' time and report on the very specific target actions that are set out in Appendix 1. I think for me, the key thing that I want to put across to you as the committee is you can read the report, you can look at the statistical evidence that's available and backs it up, and you can look and say, well, actually, we don't need to do anything. Lichfield is actually as a district in a good place, because when you're looking at obviously the data in Appendix 2, you can see that as far as people into qualifications, we're ahead of the West Midlands and we're ahead of the national average. When you're looking at the number of people who are claiming benefits in Lichfield, you can see that obviously where our percentage is stands against the West Midlands and the Great Britain average. You can look at the number of active enterprises. You can look at the number of new enterprises that are launched. You can look at the survival rate. You can all the data and can come to a conclusion, well, actually, we don't need to do anything. But I think that would be remiss of us. We should continue to support anybody who wants to launch a new enterprise, anybody who's running an enterprise, to make sure that there is the employment opportunities here within our district for people who are looking for those. Because we know, obviously, from it's not within this particular report, but we know that we see an outflow of people who live in the district going out of the district for work. So therefore, that's obviously something that's very firmly in my mind that's something we want to address. So obviously what the report is going through for you is just outlining the actions that we would expect to take. It's not something that we've thought of all by ourselves. We have been informed obviously by the data that we have available that I've referred to already, as well as a survey that was undertaken where we received 482 responses. And again, you can see these in Appendix 3. And obviously for me, it's very pleasing to see the survey coming back, looking at obviously the gain in employment, obviously the number of businesses that are expecting to see their turnover both be increasing, if not stay the same, and equally as well the feedback that we've had from businesses, which was an important one for us, informing us where they felt they would benefit from support in terms of looking at things such as assistance with marketing, networking opportunities, and indeed access to finance. So just obviously in turning to Appendix 1, obviously we've set out for you some of the things in themes that we thought we could bring forward. So startup workshops, obviously there to help people who are looking to start their own business, doesn't matter about age, but if they want to start their own business so that we can help guide them through. Mentoring. I come from a world where I remember people talking about non-executive directors, people who could take their experience and guide others. And in essence, when we're talking about mentoring, in essence, that's what we're referring to. One of the things, as I mentioned a moment ago, that businesses said to us they would like to have is more opportunities to network. So again, networking is on there. We've got obviously a section when we're looking at it in terms of skill levels. We know that we can help play a role in raising the skill levels that our working population has so that they can be equipped for new jobs and new challenges. And obviously one of the things that is listed out there is looking at things like apprenticeships. I'd also commend Jonathan at this point, we're slightly off script for the work that he's been doing in bringing forward job fairs, both here in Lichfield and in Burntwood as well, helping people who are not in work to have the opportunity to try and find it. Would mention obviously again in terms of the feedback from businesses that they were looking at the opportunities to learn about marketing and obviously digital promotion. And again, this is something that we're looking at, but it's also conscious of our need to sell the district as well. And therefore, obviously, one of the projects that Jonathan has underway is looking at obviously a digital presence to attract inward investment into our district. We have it in print format at the moment. Chairman, you will remember that as Councillor Pritchard brought that through, and it's very much obviously something that we're trying to bring into a digital format now. And again, obviously, we're in a slightly different role, but I see these as existing together, obviously promoting tourism. And again, I was fortunate earlier today to be at a session with Staffordshire County Council and other district and boroughs in terms of looking at how we can deliver partnership working to help support the business economy sector and the economy as a whole. We have a section, obviously, when you're getting on to page 69, which is talking about regeneration. Obviously, if we want to talk about anything in that area, I'm not the portfolio holder, but I could be ably assisted by the leader, who's volunteered himself to come forward and answer any questions in those areas. Probably at that point, I'm going to pause, Chairman, and look, as I said, ideally for members' views in terms of if there's anything that we think we shouldn't be doing, and more importantly, is there anything that we feel that we should be looking at in terms of helping our economy and people working in our district going forward.
Okay. Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Chair. When I was reading this report, the one thing that kind of stood out to me is that the majority of it's going to be for the city, which is understandable. That's the metropolis of the district. I don't see anything on here saying the city council are getting involved. And I know there's talk of the bid coming back. So are we doing the work of the bid and the work of Lichfield City? Or are they coming in with us? Just playing devil's advocate.
Okay.
No, thank you for the questions. I'm going to go with Councillor Yates because I think the chairman would like us to be formal. As far as the city council's involvement, and I think I would extend that in the sense of, because we should be talking about all parish councils. I would like to think that we would work with any of them in terms of supporting what we're trying to do. So I certainly know in terms of, again, I mentioned the jobs fairs earlier on. I know that Jonathan had good engagement with Burntwood Town Council in terms of facilitating that coming forward. If we can get obviously support in terms of working with any of the parish councils, we would be delighted to receive that. In terms of the parish's role, to be fair, this is a role that Lichfield District Council chooses to undertake. It's not obviously one of our statutory duties, but we see it's critically important. Obviously, that's not the same for the parish councils. They have their own roles, and this isn't one of them. But again, we would welcome any input from them. In terms of the bid, yes, our understanding is that Lichfield's bid will look to reballot during this year to see whether or not it becomes reconstituted. Obviously, that is something that we as a council will have a role in, both from facilitating the vote, as well as we will be a member of the bid if it's successful, given obviously our own properties and positions. So we have a keen interest in the bid. It has a purpose. It gives a collective voice to business. If it can come back, which is obviously in the gift of the businesses within the area, then obviously it's something that could certainly be helpful. If the bid wasn't to come back, then yes, certainly it'd be a challenge for us as the Lichfield District Council to think about how do we capture that business voice, because we need to make sure that we're listening to our businesses and that we have their views on board. For the same reason, obviously, I know that Jonathan is working closely, and I would thank him at this opportunity. He's not here tonight. Councillor Darren Ennis, who is helping us in terms of exploring the possibilities of a bid for Burntwood as well.
So just to clarify then, we've not asked for any financial help from any of the councils Birchwood, Litchfield City, other parishes towards this. We're doing this ourselves. And with the bid, if the bid does come back, does this change any of the work that we would be looking to do as part of this that you put in front of us? Or would we, because it kind of seems that there would be some overlap.
Thank you for the question. Again, Councillor Yates, in terms of any of the parish councils funding any of what we've set out, no, they're not.
Would the question really, would we ask them to provide, so we haven't asked them for any financial assistance? That's a no, I guess.
The simple answer is no. David's whispering in my ears about where some money came back from a development that wasn't taken forward, and we committed and said we would put it into developing the Birchwood bid, and equally as well the parish council in that circumstance said they would put some money in. But at this point in time, the answer is a simple no. The parishes haven't put in.
Thank you.
With regards to is there any overlap with the activities of the bid? I'd have to say there is the possibility of that, but obviously that's presupposing, and I don't know what a Litchfield bid would come back and put forward as its purpose. Which obviously when they go for a reballot, they will have to put forward what it is they intend to do. There cannot be obviously an overlap whereby a bid delivers statutory responsibilities of this council. Touched on it earlier, the economic activity that we undertake isn't a statutory responsibility. But one would hope that if the bid does come back, then obviously we can work alongside it so that our activities dovetail with what they do and that we don't duplicate.
I think also for clarity for people, is it worth knowing what a bid is, who's behind the bid, how that works? Because I think some people don't understand how that works.
A bid stands for a business improvement district, and what you have is you have a geographic area that's defined. All those businesses within the geographic area, if the bid as a concept is accepted and put into place, they all pay a levy. The levy goes into the bid as a legal entity, and then they look to use the monies that's raised, obviously, to support the local area in accordance with obviously what they've said their stated aims are.
But we don't know who's doing the bid this time. We don't know if it's a company or people behind it.
We are in discussions with people at the moment. Some of them are the same, obviously, that were part of the bid before, but that could obviously be subject to change going forward.
Thank you.
Councillor Norwood.
I was only trying to help Councillor Easylegs, and obviously was offering some help there. But anyway, the executive summary for the report says the report provides intelligence on the district's current broad socio-economic status through national data, the results from the most recent business survey, which has helped to inform and outline plans to council new economic prosperity strategy iteration, taking the form of a 12-month action plan. But what the businesses said, and the order of the popularity, as it were, was marketing, networking, access to finance, and strategic partners. I don't see the appendix fitting in that way. I just wanted to get up with it because it seems to be a very broad brush thing. Like, oh, let's tick every box we can. I'm being provocative, but let's tick every box we can. But in actual fact, they've actually got a narrower, more focused strategic approach that actually would have helped the businesses in the way that they seem to be asking they would like some help with.
Thank you, Councillor Norwood, for the question. Obviously, when we undertook the survey, we asked businesses for where would they like support, and therefore, obviously, as you've drawn out in Appendix 3.4, is listing out the areas that they've said they would like to see us support them. Now, we have tried to capture them, and those activities I can recognise are obviously set out in Appendix 1. I think if I sort of extrapolate what you were saying, are you therefore advocating that we concentrate on those areas that we've had responses on and not the other actions that are suggested in Appendix 1?
Surely those businesses are going to fail anyway. They can't bother to put a form in to say that we would like this help. Let's concentrate on the ones that actually do want some help. They might be going somewhere and they can actually benefit the district mutually, in fact, to be successful. And what's the point of having a survey then if you're not going to give it the weight that I think it ought to have in this? And again, it'll be slightly provocative, being blunt, but I just can't see all these little things, how they fit in with marketing or networking and so on. If when you go through Appendix 1 and just say, well, that obviously refers to networking or strategic, I'll be willing to accept that, yeah.
Okay, no problem, I take the point. Businesses obviously have said that they are looking for support in around networking. I see that as the third action under 1.1 in Appendix 1.
Yeah.
With regards to marketing, I see that on page 68, 1.3.
And so you missed the point if you have to get to these ones.
Well, I'm not, I'm just reading as I'm going down the appendix.
Yeah.
They've also, that's networking and marketing. Access to finance, you'll appreciate that to a certain extent, we can guide people, but we don't provide finance. And access strategic partners, then obviously again, that's page 69, partnership, working with business support. So we are trying to act upon what the businesses have given us. And I appreciate there is a lot more actions that we've listed out that we would like to try and help and assist businesses with. But obviously, yes, we have listened to the businesses, and we do have actions in and around there, which again, I hope you'd measure us on as a committee in 12 months' time to see whether or not we've been successful. Anything else?
I'm just not entirely convinced, that's all, basically, because it's such a broader approach than I thought we needed to have done, but time will tell if that's successful. I'm sure all this will help businesses, but whether we focus on those aspects that businesses actually want would seem to make more sense to me.
Councillor Hope.
Thank you, Chair. Could we just get a little bit more information about how these surveys were distributed, please? Thank you.
Jonathan.
Yeah. So the survey we did, there was two methods really. Regards to the company that we commissioned to take the work, Progressive Research did direct telephone calls, telemarketing where possible if the data was available, and then also using the council comms as well as our own business databases as well, and pushing it out as well to partner organisations as well. So really just a wide range of communication points really, trying to reach as many as possible.
A quick supplementary, if that's okay, Chair. In terms of the data we used in-house to contact local businesses, was that via telephone, emails, direct mailing?
It was through our business newsletter, but as well as overall council comms as well. So if a business is on our e-newsletter database, it's about 1,600, so they would have received it directly. But as well as that, it was through communication platforms through the council as well.
Councillor.
I assume that you do use the jobs fair that the schools provide, because in Brentwood, both CTA and EDA, they have it extremely good and popular jobs fairs, and that is important as well. And as well as that, on apprenticeships, I recognise that you've got all age apprenticeships, but and you also look at NEETs as well, which is important. So all those things are linking up with the investment for businesses, etc. And I also wanted to ask about, at some stage you're going to set up, or hopefully set up, a youth council. And will you have some will you allow the youth council to have some input? Because the youth of today don't always get what they think that we think we know what they should have, but that's not necessarily what they want. And I think that businesses need to be aware of input from young people. So I hope that that will be taken on board as well.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. I'm going to pass to Jonathan just to confirm in terms of the school's involvement with the jobs fair. I know obviously we do want to involve school age leavers as much as obviously those who are seeking employment. And then I may look to the back of the room to answer the question on the youth council. But Jonathan, do you want to go first?
Yes, no problem. Thank you, Councillor. Regards to the jobs fair and schools, I am in contact with a lot of the careers directors or other colleges or career contacts about what careers fairs take forward, but as well jobs fairs as well. In terms of engagement with the jobs fairs, it has been promoted to those career career directors or career departments within those councils and colleges. Where we do have the contact details, and as well as that, apprenticeships as well, and that we focus on that really in terms of those opportunities.
Jamie, check on the Youth Council.
Thank you, Chair. On the Youth Council point, absolutely. The intent is that any policy, action plan, strategy that is developed going forward will go through the Youth Council en route to formal and member decision-making points, so that the viewpoint of young people can be identified as well, or at least challenged through that process. That's okay, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor. Councillor Robson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure it won't surprise you. I've got a dozen, although 10 of them are quite quick line items. So do you want me to take the kind of
two again?
Well, do you want to take the two kind of more strategic ones first, and then go into? So Appendix 3, top page 74 of the document pack. The paragraph that's there talks about continuing to invest in tourism and promote Lichfield as a destination. Sure, we all agree with that. I think we've got some excellent tourism assets in the district, not just in Lichfield City, but especially in Lichfield City. I think we are potentially missing something in there, that we're not really talking about light manufacturing, which I know does employ significant numbers of people in the district. And there have, I mean, to the point where there's been news releases put into the press about how buoyant the local light manufacturing sector is. And I think particularly if we're comparing maybe some of the kind of more hospo jobs, which don't tend to be quite as high paid as some of those in the light manufacturing area, whether that's something that we want to, and I'm not going to suggest we try and revisit it tonight and go through and add amendments, but I think in terms of feedback from us, that's something which I think we could look at. And then the second one, I'm a little bit concerned that in this entire document, the word wage doesn't appear once. Because this is a really important thing that our council does to deliver economic prosperity to our district. However, whilst we are very lucky that we do have a very entrepreneurial population, we do have a lot of startups, that are successful. We have a lot of self-employed people. The overwhelming majority of economically active people are employees. And whether there is something that we can do around here. I know Councillor Strachan is currently looking at our position regarding the living wage, but actually, is there anything that we can do in terms of our communications to encourage businesses locally, and actually to highlight businesses locally that are already kind of passing that threshold, to really push on and to really talk to people about the immense value that a workforce brings to a business. Because I think that's really key, because if we're talking about economic prosperity, we want that to be shared out to everybody. And I think the idea of having that type of discussion alongside business, I don't want us to be in a situation where we're the council, we're going to preach at people. But I think there might be some space to maybe talk about that, talk about the ways that businesses interact with their employees, because there are some brilliant examples of cooperatives, of CICs, of non-traditional business ownerships around the district that offer huge advantages to their employees, both financial and otherwise, whether that's something that we might want to try and add in on that.
Thank you for that, Councillor Robson. I couldn't agree more. Certainly in terms of looking at the digital presence for inward investment, what we want to do is showcase why people would want to base their businesses in this district. And I think obviously picking up as you've just done on that topic, I think that's something that would be tremendous for us to identify and show why, as an area, what our aspirations are, both in terms of the businesses that we want to attract, and equally as well in terms of highlighting, as you said, the benefits of businesses in the district already, and the leading example they can give. In terms of light manufacturing, in terms of obviously what focus can we put there, then yes, I agree. We can definitely take that away in terms of look at what actions that we've either got already or we should think about. Anything off the top of your head, Jonathan, that just to throw you under the proverbial bus that you think we could do there?
I think there we are. I think in terms of the manufacturing sector overall, it is quite buoyant locally, as you said, and I do know a few businesses within the light manufacturing sector locally as well. So as you said, it could be worth having a conversation with that sector or that element, that subsector alone, and really understanding that a bit better and how their growth is developing locally, why in Lichfield, and as well as that, using that as a, not to say a case study, but as well as that, more of a case of how can others learn from that, really. So no, thank you for flagging that sector up.
So if I can just I take the point entirely about manufacturing. I think is a key sector that we've got. It is referenced, albeit obliquely, in there, and it was part of the thinking. But certainly some of the activities that we've got, we've got a 12-month action plan. We've taken the view that this is a 12-month action plan rather than a 3-year plan, simply because there's so much uncertainty in the economic field, both at an economic level, macroeconomic level, but equally in terms of what support's available. So at the time this was written, we didn't know we were in transition period from sort of previous support grants. So like yes, you recognise ERDF and all the other sort of different funding regimes that were in place from the UK government. And we're only just now trying to put in place some support from the UK SPF, which is the replacement for it. And we're trying to put all our plans together. So given that it's a 12-month period, we had to try and get a very short focus on what could be delivered by us as a council and where we could actually deliver and have the greatest impact. So that was sort of some of the thinking. So things like wages, it's difficult for us to influence that's a much bigger discussion. Some of the activities you've got in here are quite sort of focused on delivering what we can deliver within a 12-month period. We've got a UK SPF, which is over UK Single Prosperity Fund, which is looking at this over a 3-year period. We're developing our bids there, and there's a lot bigger pot of money that we can play with there. So that's well, we've been allocated the money. We know it's £3.285 million coming into the district. So it's how we use that, and that's part of the next discussion, that we're using this action plan as part of the development of the broader, bigger piece of support work that's coming up in the future as we get the UK SPF done.
Got the whole now and somebody else coming, or do you want to carry on?
Do you want me, Jeff?
I was going to say, Chairman, I think that was 2. That means there's another 10 to come. Unless you were speaking tongue in cheek, Councillor.
I know there's another 10 to come, but I've got the smaller items.
Yeah. Just some observations from me then, just some thoughts. It seems a very ambitious plan to me. And I just wonder whether you're confident that we have the resources to deliver all that you have in the action plan. Secondly, when we talk about access to finance, are we making sure that we're using the resources that we have, not too far away with LEPs, the chambers, etc., to make sure that we can signpost new businesses to the right place to get funding? Have we considered possibly looking at incentives for new businesses? I know some districts do look at giving some sort of discount to new businesses setting up, or using premises that are owned by the council to try and encourage that going forward. Yeah, I think that's probably okay for now. So they're just some comments really of areas you could look at.
They're very, very welcome, Chairman, and thank you for that. In terms of signposting, yes, we do. Jonathan does that incredibly well. You asked the question about resource. Jonathan is not alone. He is supported by others. And certainly, if he was to turn around to me and say that the team needs additional resource, I would be turning to his current line manager. And we were making the case very, very lively, because it's critical, obviously, to the prosperity of the district, and that we play our part in this. In terms of incentives, we have certainly, through using some of the grant money, given incentives to business to encourage them to grow. And there remains money, obviously, in the council's risk and recovery fund. And certainly, I know the leader is keen to have a discussion in terms of how we make sure that those monies that remain unallocated this time are put to good use. I think my only observation in terms of incentives is at all times, I'd want to ensure that there's a level playing field. I wouldn't like to see an existing business disadvantaged by having a competitor given incentives to come in next to them, and therefore operating in a completely different environment to the existing businesses. As long as we can ensure that doesn't happen, then absolutely incentives to help our local economy grow is something that we've already proved that we will do, and I would very much welcome doing again.
Councillor Watson, you will next go.
Thank you, Chair. And you'll be glad to know that you've actually ticked one of them off, so we're down to 9.
Hey.
It's going the right way already. Item 1.1 in Appendix 1. 12 workshops and a budget of £20,000 sounds very like £1,666.67 per workshop, which seems very high. I know organisations locally and some people who run networking sessions that aim for a budget of significantly less than £500. So I'd be interested to know why you would think we're going to be spending almost 3 times as much as some of the groups that are already operating locally. And then I suppose the second part on that one question is, given that there are a lot of these already in existence, what are we going to be doing that adds value to that rather than just creating more smaller networking groups? And are we entirely certain that the work that we're going to be doing will enhance the current local networking environment, as opposed to just walking around and kicking things around and potentially just muddying waters further?
I'm going to give you a very quick answer, and then I'm going to pass it on because David's already got his hand up here silently volunteering. I think with regards to the budget, we've allocated an amount of money, I think, on a worst case contingency. So if we had a huge amount of expense in terms of room hire, if we needed to organise anything that wasn't there, what I would say is in knowing that the budgets that we set in terms of the first tranche of money to do with risk and recovery, again, sound like a bit of a broken record. I would absolutely applaud Jonathan for bringing many things in under budget that then left more money to be spent back into doing the things that we're doing. Not that he's set a target for himself, but I would be expecting the same as well, Councillor Robertson, that he'll deliver these for a lot less. In terms of making sure that we're not duplicating, that we're actually adding to the work of existing networking groups that exist. That's certainly what our ambition is, but to put a little bit more detail behind that, I'll give you an assurance to that. David or Jonathan?
Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Eady. Yeah, I mean, I just endorse the message. I think the budget is there. I think there may well be some instances where we need to pay, say, professional speakers to come in if it's talking about specific topics. I think we'll look to minimise the cost wherever possible, using sort of alternative business premises, trying to do whatever we can. So it's not a challenge to spend 20,000. If we can deliver the targets within that, then that's great. Equally, we might be able to deliver more, and I think it's there as an aspiration to try and ensure that we can provide good quality networking. You know, it was what the businesses were asking for in the survey, so we're trying to provide good quality information that is appropriate for businesses. And so sometimes, if you're bringing in sort of top level, mentors, for example, that businesses need, marketing experts, whatever, and sometimes we may have to pay something to try and bring them in, but we will look to minimise the cost wherever possible and maximise the outputs. And it's been done in conjunction with other networking groups as we're working around the city and the district. So it's trying to make sure that what we're doing is complementing and supplementing rather than competing.
Thank you both, and I think there's some. I'm very assured by those answers. Thanks very much. And if I can skip on to 1.4, visitor economy. The first one, the easy one, is the second item in the final column. Increased visit numbers to the Visit Lichfield website. I haven't checked this recently, but I believe there is just a general trend that internet traffic increases. So just by setting that as we'd like this to increase, it's possibly setting a line that would just go across anyway. And also, I don't necessarily think that speaks to the reason why we're doing this. Because actually, if we have 20,000 people who click the Visit Lichfield website and then don't come here, according to this, we've had 20,000 visitors, so therefore that's a good thing. Do we want to potentially talk to tourism businesses and potentially speak to them about whether they're hearing that people found out about their business from there, or people found out about the City of Festivals from the work? Because I think that's a much better measure in terms of, is the Visit Lichfield website doing what it wants, than have lots of people visit it and then maybe not make a spending decision on that basis. Sorry, it's my bad.
That's all right, no problem. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think you're spot on. Actually, we need a specific target in terms of the Visit Lichfield. As much as I've touched on, obviously, we're looking at bringing forward the inward investment digital presence. The Visit Lichfield digital presence is being refreshed for the purposes of making sure that we're providing clearer, more effective, obviously, opportunities for people to find out about why they want to visit our district, and then ideally obviously grow our overnight stay accommodation as well, given the long-term value of that. In terms of capturing information, in terms of did you click on the site and did that result in you coming, and that is something that Lisa Clemson has me bending her ear on a regular basis. To a certain extent, whilst you can measure the number of clicks, we do have to get basically feet on the ground and go and talk to local businesses in terms of hearing from them, very much as you were saying, in terms of, was there any, did you get your reservations? Did you get that hotel stay because somebody said to you, they clicked and visited? And we're going to have to work with our partners through Lichfield Place Board to try and capture that information from them. Again, that's something that myself and David and Jonathan and Lisa and Sophie talk about on a regular basis, that we do want to try and get that kind of granular level. It will rely on businesses to tell us that. It will rely on businesses to actually ask that question themselves in the first place. Something that I would be very keen to think about doing is encouraging local businesses to work together and perhaps offer sort of an itinerary or a package, and maybe therefore we can again promote something through the website that has maybe like a discount code, which would be a way of measuring if people are using it, we know they're coming through it. So certainly again, we'll go away and we'll look at a specific target in terms of digital traffic for Visit Lichfield. And as I said, we are continuing to work with our partners through the Lichfield Police Board and with Staffordshire County Council and Destination Management Partnership to look at how obviously we can capture more real information of, has the spend on the digital presence actually resulted in people coming and visiting the Lichfield district and spending in our local economy.
So just to add to that, and there's a practical difficulty that sometimes businesses aren't prepared to release that information, and that's just, this is the point that we sometimes struggle with. We know what we're trying to get, but the point I wanted to make as well was that the target above it, supporting local economy by encouraging more visitors and encouraging dwell time and overnight, that's probably a more important one. It's difficult on the budget that we've got, because we've got to increase bed space in the district, and that's something that is an ongoing one. And so how do we do that? And that's a much bigger boulder. It's exactly where we want to try and get to. That's the whole point of encouraging the visitor economy, is trying to get the focus there. But there's a lot of steps to try and do that. So we've got our eye on that top level one, but equally it's part of the journey, is what we're trying to do to get people into there. We've got to encourage people to come in, and then gradually we're working on ways to try and encourage bed nights and overnight stays, etc., etc. It's not as straightforward. It's not a click your fingers and it's done. It's a complex process we're going through.
Just a couple of observations from me, just for a change from Dave, from Councillor Robertson. Sorry. Visitor economy, I see there's no budget there. Is there a reason for that? And secondly, with the Commonwealth Games a short distance away from us, what have we done to try to capture the people that were visiting there to actually come into Lichfield? I know when the first was announcement of the Commonwealth County Committee of Birmingham, the leader of Birmingham City Council, was very keen to ensure that all districts and boroughs in the West Midlands had an opportunity to be able to utilise some of the resources they had, as well as trying to encourage people who are visiting from many countries to come out of Birmingham using the transport links that we have, bringing people into the cities around and the towns. I just wondered if we'd done anything to sort of try and jump on the back of that sort of event to try and increase the visitor numbers to the city and to the district.
Thank you for the questions, Chairman. In terms of the item relating to tourism and the visitor economy, they have their own separate budget. So any of their activities will be funded from within that. So it's not a new ask. In terms of working with the Commonwealth Games, trying to attract visitors, yes, we have certainly engaged with them. I think at this point, if she was here, Lisa Clinton would be disappointed that you didn't spot, obviously, the pictures in and around Grand Central, obviously promoting Lichfield as a place to visit for the Commonwealth Games. And there was a chap in front of them. Somebody might have heard of him recently. He's got a film out, Maverick or something like that. Oh yes, Tom Cruise. He was featured in front of
Lichfield, did he?
He didn't mention Lichfield, but he was standing right in front of it. Well, there you are. How can we top you, Grant? But the reality obviously is, yes, we are playing an active part. I am, whilst it's not my own portfolio anymore, I am currently waiting for the very latest list to come through of our activities that we're putting on in the district in terms of the Commonwealth Games, because I would expect to see us begin to promote those now, as other districts and boroughs around the area are doing as well.
Thank you. Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. You've also ticked off another one of my questions.
Oh,
We're down to 8,
I like
we're doing 2, but we're definitely going the right way.
I needed 6.
Continuing on 1.4, the Lichfield Time Travellers AR Trail app, I think is an excellent innovation, and I think it's something that we should thoroughly pat ourselves on the back for introducing. I think it's something that is different. It's not something that you see knocking around everywhere. I think it's something that could be really positive and would allow us to kind of put ourselves at the forefront of this. Just kind of a kind of thing for me, for you guys to take away, how to look at is, would love to see it extended. I think particularly with it being augmented reality, it's something which is hopefully going to appeal to a younger demographic. Potentially, is there something that we can do in there around specifically picking topics and potentially adding videos that might specifically interest them, particularly around, say, potentially the diversity of Lichfield's history, and also potentially moving it out of just the city centre, potentially drawing in some other areas, which again might help with that dwell time. If people know they can come and do this in Lichfield on the one day, and then they can pop up to Burnwood and there's another trail there, and potentially working with partners to do that.
Yes, thank you for that, Councillor Robertson. Yes, I think Lisa Clinton and her team have worked very hard on bringing it forward, and I'm really pleased that we've got something as good as it is. Again, it's something that we were able to fund through using the Welcome Back Fund money that came to us from government, and again, you know, it was an idea that was shared in partnership working with Tamworth, because they were using it at their castle. Equally as well, I know that places like Lichfield Cathedral are working on theirs. And again, in the Burntwood Town deal meetings that myself and the leader obviously attend with Burntwood Town Council, we have had conversations in terms of would it be possible to extend something out there. I know that they are working on obviously their own heritage trail at the moment. Again, if I reference obviously conversations with Councillor Darren Ennis, obviously I believe the geographical spread that's much potentially wider. Obviously what you're trying to do is make these trails easily walkable and with a number of points in the same area, but it's certainly something that, you know, we will be measuring its use, its success, and if we can see that, then yes, there is desire on our part to roll it out to other areas within the district.
Thank you. Lovely. And Councillor Tranter.
Can I just ask a question? Can someone tell me what a silver entrepreneur is? Why silver?
David.
That's thanks, Councillor, for the question. That is probably my fault. That it's silver, as in it's a programme that I've been involved in and run in different districts. It refers to the colour of the hair as well as the colour of your money. So it's silver entrepreneurs have been focused on supporting people who are over 50, say 40, depending on when, and encourage them to get involved in helping businesses start up in other districts. So silver literally refers to hair and money. It's a bit of supposed to be a play on word, but I apologise if it's clearly not very transparent. Yeah. So that's the explanation.
Anybody else? As a councillor.
Yeah, I thought you did the Lone Ranger actually, but probably for your time. Just on 2.4, please, which is two things. The district council has an incubator space. The idea is going to be to help fledgling businesses and that try and get going. I just wondered how you were going to stop them staying there forever. I only asked that question because the old mining college, that's the original concept when we obviously the county rescued the old mining college as a community event, community asset. It was all incubator units there, starting to pop, but you know, some of them have been there for years, and it's difficult to have to shift them unless you're actually official. That was the first question. The second one is really to make a comment on protecting and increasing employment space on 2.4, and this is something I'll be quoting. And next time somebody tries to build houses alone and no businesses on the site that is in the local plan identified and burnt with town centre, so that just adds a bit of extra support to the local plan, which I'm grateful for Councillor Eady and protection for the town centre site in Burwood. I was wondering about how you're going to what practical ways of moving people on, putting it to the probably a better way of helping them to, you know.
Thank you, Councillor Norman. But yes, I mean, the local plan, as you referenced, obviously identifies it here as employment land, and we should try to ensure wherever possible that employment opportunities come forward on that land and it isn't lost to residential. If it's lost to residential, then my view would be it needs to be replaced elsewhere. With regards to obviously the incubator space and people not, shall we say, outstaying the usage of it, then I think the first challenge, obviously, for us as a district as a whole, is to ensure that there's adequate other alternative office space for them to grow into as hopefully they grow. David has obviously mentioned to me in my ear that anybody who goes into our incubator space will be given a 3-year short-term contract. So in essence, one would imagine there's a bouncer on the door when it finishes to say, you must move on. But again, we're back to the first point of you need to have somewhere in the district for them to move on to.
Okay. Anybody else? Any questions? So in the we've been asking the recommendations to note the content. Sorry, John. Oh, have you? Sorry, Councillor. I thought when you came back last time you gave me that look of
apologies about that.
No,
they are quite short ones. 2.1 business survival, third column. That's immeasurable. We can't prove that a business has survived because of our input. I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't be doing this. I think it's something we absolutely should. We should be working with businesses to make sure that where they're experiencing difficulties, we're supporting them. But that as a criteria that we're going to be reviewing next year is immeasurable.
I take the point. I think it's the key one, isn't it? Of what are we trying to encapsulate? That Lichfield District Council is not the reason that a business is caused to fail, and therefore that's about how. Perhaps less about our policies, but more about how we apply them, and therefore we need to be cognizant of working with businesses to support businesses across the organisation, and that's perhaps what we're trying to encapsulate in terms of can you measure how many businesses LDC is responsible for not allowing to continue. I don't know if we have any statistics on that already, but we're going to hope that in essence, the answer to that going forward is 0.
The stats on the,
We do have the stats with regards to, as mentioned as part of that, though obviously the first and 5 year survival rate. Although I appreciate what you're saying in terms of that business survival, it won't be the main input as a council, but it's where I guess we can make interventions to assist them to in their longevity, really. I think that's where it was going. Yeah.
I think it just needs a reword in terms, because I think at the end of the day, what gets measured gets done. So I think if we can construct this in such a way that criteria that we're going to be measuring, you guys on, and therefore you guys are going to be focusing on, if we can construct that in such a way that it goes back to that original point and is something that's clearly measurable, it should allow everything to flow smoothly and should help us out when we get there. If I can skip on to 2.2, again, driving footfall I think is really important, particularly for our retail businesses. But particularly when we're talking about local supply chains, there's a lot of really good work that's already been done by a lot of businesses. And I think actually there's a piece of work that we can do alongside that and as part of that to just highlight where businesses are already doing this. I mean, I'm not going to go into it now because we'll be here till midnight if I start listening to businesses that I know are doing this. But I think there's a piece of work there which we can do to make sure that people are better informed, they can make those informed choices, and hopefully support those businesses that are already doing that work. And then the last one on 2.2, occupied premises, third column, reduce the vacancy rate in both urban centres by 1%, which, unless we've got a minimum of 100 empty units, I can't imagine that we can do it to that granularity unless we're doing it by the number of days. So I think on that one, again, it's one of these measures where we want to see something drop by 1%, but can it drop by 1%? We haven't got 100 empty units across Lichfield and Burton town and city centres.
Thank you. On the last one, I get you completely on the grounds that actually what we would end up coming back and saying is it's reduced by a lot more than 1%, because actually, do you know what, the vacancy rates were so high in the first place that there wasn't an awful lot of empty units, and the net impact is more than 1%. You've got to have something, and therefore I think we can go away and look and see whether or not it's something other than 1%. It's perhaps looking at, say, flipping it round. What's the current occupancy rate, and can we see that increase? With regards to the local supply chains, obviously, yeah, it's not about reinventing the wheel. It's exactly the point that you're making in terms of promoting the existing local suppliers that exist and encouraging those who are using those ones outside of the district to look at the ones who are inside the district to shorten the supply chain.
And then it is my last one. I'm sure everyone will be happy. 2.4, protecting and increasing employment space. Again, in that same column, a net increase in commercial floor space throughout the district. Absolute or percentage? Because I suggest that one is almost certainly a given, and one is almost certainly impossible. I think with the amount of residential properties that are going up, the idea that we're going to increase our percentage of floor space for commercial enterprises versus residential is, I mean, if you could deliver that, I'd be very, very, very impressed. But I think in terms of just adding a single square foot somewhere in the district, I think that's quite a low bar to meet. So again, it's possibly just a kind of request from me to go away and maybe look at tightening that up a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I think I can take the point on board. I mean, obviously, we've got specific allocations in local plans for residential. We've got specific allocations, obviously, for employment. What we're trying to say is we want to see the employment built out and delivering more floor space. And I appreciate the comments of that's quite a low bar just by saying one, effectively 1 square feet. I get that. Jonathan being more ambitious.
Thank you. Councillor Cross.
Thanks, Chair. It's a question regarding 1.3 inward investment. I appreciate that the strategic plan is focusing heavily on supporting existing business and potential businesses. There seems to be quite a small box for an area where attracting existing new businesses should be. And the question is regarding the website and what's the target and the metric for measuring that success? Thanks.
With regards to obviously the specific target that we've got at 1.3, it's obviously about creating the digital presence. So in terms of the metric, it will either happen or it won't happen. So as far as obviously the digital presence is concerned, that is exactly what we want to do. It has been frustrated to date, but I know that obviously work has been ongoing. And we would hope to see that actually concluded sooner rather than later. So that rather than being, forgive me, something that's lost somewhere on LBC's website, that is, and it's not an unfair comment to make, can be difficult to navigate and find information, has much more prominence that allows us then to, if you like, promote the district more widely in terms of trying to attract new businesses to come and base themselves here, as much as obviously using it as an opportunity to encourage businesses that are already here to grow here rather than having to think about going elsewhere.
Thank you. Everybody done with that? I think I would hope you would find Councillor Eady and your team that we've given that a good airing and given you some good areas to develop and look into, and we look forward to seeing the results of that in future action plan updates from you. So thank you very much for presenting that to us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Committee.
We'll move on to item 9, which is the work programme and forward plan. At this point, and in consultation with the Vice Chair, we have thought that going forward, it may well be a good idea if once the draft agenda is circulated, hopefully earlier than they are present, that we have a pre-scrutiny meeting just with us all, either by virtual or in a building, just to go through that, just to see if there is any further additional information that would help us when we're actually having our full meeting. And so that if there are any issues, we can go back to the cabinet member or to the officer and say, we want further clarification on this, or can you tell us about that? But equally, it will give us a chance to have read the papers in advance of the full scrutiny meeting that's coming forward. So the idea would be a week or so before the actual scrutiny meeting, we would have an informal pre-meeting with us all just to go through any items that we may have brought up from that agenda. Now, I understand that we can see that's going to create additional work for the council, particularly in as much as officers need to be getting the reports out quicker to us. But I think for us to do it justice, I think we need to have that time to at least read through all those papers, and then if there are any questions that we want to develop, we can get them ahead of the meeting, so that when we get to the meeting, we've got that information that's furnished with us going forward. So I would hope that you would agree that a good way going forward. And the second item is that, and I don't know, Councillor Stacker may well not be aware of this at this moment in time, but we thought in December it'd be good for us to have a budget meeting so that we could look at potential proposals that we may think the cabinet may wish to look into going forward, given the fact obviously we won't have the settlement until sort of Christmas time, but I think at least if we can start looking to try and help the portfolio holder in relation to budget ideas, and equally he may well be able to furnish us with some ideas at that stage, but I think it will give us a good chance to look at that to see if there's any different areas at which we could perhaps explore a bit further and give that information, and that will be an additional meeting of ONS in December. So again, I hope that you would agree that's a good way forward for us to actually get into that very important realm of the budget ahead of decision taken on where efficiency is going to be made, etc. Everybody happy with those two? See, I tell you, Vice Chair, they'd all be happy. Happy with that? That's great. Well,
yeah, but do they understand what you just said? Anyway, I was ready to say these would only be short meetings, these pre-scrutiny meetings, and that should be the case, and just focusing, and then we'll make these meetings even shorter.
Well, absolutely, and it will give council officers the opportunity to have all those questions ahead of the game, so that we can make sure we've got those answers presumably coming before we have the meeting. And yes, you're right, Councillor Norman, maybe for a quicker meeting when we actually get to the actual full meeting as it is. Anyway, should we work through Councillor England?
Yeah, I totally agree with what just been said. A lot of
What, by me or him?
both.
Oh.
You are acting as a team, aren't you?
Yes, we are.
Chair and Vice Chair.
We are.
It's
I
pitching
think
my
that-
ideas and I'm letting it, yeah.
Sorry,
He's pitching my ideas and I'm letting it.
Lovely.
that's so long as you're working together, that's all we need to know. I feel that that's a good idea, the suggestions you've made. A lot of the questions tonight could have been solved just as you suggested by an email to the certain people. We could have had that to read and we could have understood what the questions were asked and when they were answered. So I agree with everything. That's fine for me.
Thank you. Okay, shall we work down the work programme then? If we can, so you can see the first two items we've dealt with, the first page we've dealt with, except for the notes from the task group. We've got notes from the city centre master plan in confidential, haven't we? So we've got that coming forward. Fuel stream recycling task group. Is that, no, that's on the, it's not on that, it's the tick is on the council community fund, which we've dealt with tonight, haven't we?
Mm.
So. Count Norman.
Yeah, you talk about the special budget meeting, but should we have a, we've had the briefing papers on the MTFS, which
Yeah.
we agreed to, but should there be another opportunity to look at the MTFS later in the year? I don't know when, but that would be looking at the dates and how they would fit in with the cabinet, but we ought to have a look at the MTFS.
Yeah,
you
I think we've got
know,
one
I
here.
assume
I've got a tick here for September's meeting,
September. yeah.
medium term financial strategy,
September,
Okay.
September, November and Jan. So in between that, we'll have our budget meeting as well.
So it'll be October then.
September.
You said between September and November?
I said there's a meeting in
I meant that
September,
October.
medium term financial strategy. Councillor Norman. So at this moment in time as well, we'll be looking for anything else that we want to put on to the work programme going forward. We have some ideas, but I'm keen to hear what ideas you have on items that should go on the work plan from members around this committee. Christine?
And I'm not a member of the committee, apologies. But as we have the cabinet member here, originally there was going to be a task group to look through the local council tax support scheme.
Yeah.
And I wondered if that is something you wish to come to full committee now, and the cabinet member is looking at me. So it's just when we can fit that through. So I know, and I can see from the forward plan, there is an update due in July, but whether that update can then come to ONS after and try and work through. But
Councillor Jackman, join us, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilcox. This was the item that I was hoping to catch your eye on a little bit later on in the meeting, but we may as well do it in the open forum. I had correspondence with my officers today. The cabinet paper to commit this to consultation with major preceptors is virtually complete and will be going to July cabinet. That consultation exercise could take place reasonably swiftly, and my position with the team who advised me is that it would be improper to bring that scheme to scrutiny while the consultation is underway. We knocked around some potential ideas. There is a theoretical programmed date to bring it here in September, but if that were to be too early, it may be that this could slip to your November meeting, and it may be appropriate if that came there. Those are initial thoughts. I'm not sure this would be something that would be suitable for a task group, and I'd certainly like to hear the views from the whole committee.
Okay, yeah. Are we happy that we get that put to into November, and then we can take it from there? Instead of a task group, etc. If we need to, yeah. You've mentioned that. Everyone happy with that?
yeah.
I mean, some of the other ideas that we had on here were we wanted to the planning advisory service came and did a review, and an action plan was produced, and perhaps we want to see where we are in relation to the action plan and whether or not things are happening. So I've already mentioned that to the portfolio holder, that could be something that we will discuss tonight, whether we want that to come forward. The action plan from the planning advisory review that took place probably 18 months ago, probably. Are members happy that we see and monitor that, see how that's performing, the action plan around the planning service?
Yeah.
Yeah. We've got the council tax support grant. Procurement. I know we've had a briefing paper this evening on procurement, but again, do we want to sort of delve into that a bit further and see there was an action plan in relation to that? Can we get for us to look peruse and look over procurement? Yeah. Councillor Robertson.
No, yeah, I agree. Is it worth leaving that one on till later on through the civic year? Just I'm aware there's been a lot of work going on. So actually, if we leave it until say 2023, then we'll be able to look at some data in terms of
Yes, that's a good idea. Yeah, Councillor White.
Sorry, Chair, this is on a different subject altogether, if that's okay.
Okay.
Dual waste recycling, consider the review being undertaken and a way forward. Do we have a time frame where we might see that review? Thank you.
Sorry. Don't know whether we can have anyone at the back can answer that question or not. Or...
Just sit here, sorry, just so it's
Councillor Bullen.
on a microphone, thank you. So the review into the operational rollout, I think is not going to be a report that is intended for circulation to an overview and scrutiny committee, etc. It's an operational document about what's happening in terms of the specific rollout of that. Chair, if you want to bring it to this committee, it's clearly within your rights to do so. I'm just thinking about the benefit of that. I think for me, the benefit would be looking at the policy and maybe taking a view at 3 months to say, well, actually, is it having the intended effect that we wanted it to or not? And clearly we won't have the data available to us for another 3 months really, so it's meaningful data. That said, clearly, if the operational report is something that you want to bring here, then it's entirely within your rights to do so. So I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just worried about
I think the suggestion you make is a good suggestion. I think members, are you any views on that? Yes.
Well, we need a review of some report coming to this scrutiny committee, otherwise we're failing in our duty with all the controversy and all the problems that we've had, but also to sell recycling to the resident, because the way it's happened is that it's actually discouraging some recycling when we should be encouraging recycling, but saying work with us as a partnership. If I produce waste, I should be the one that helps to get it reused, reduced, and so on. So we do need a report of some sort of review. Otherwise, if I was a member of the public, I think, well, what's the point of the council, basically?
Councillor Chanty.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, there's been a lot of the public that have made comments, some good, some bad, about the blue bags. And I'm not saying they're going to go or anything, but there's some issues that need looking at. So we could do with a report.
Okay. Councillor.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything being said, which was the point of my question. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor.
Yeah, just obviously I've got a declared interest. My wife's a cabinet member, but also I've got more of declared interests. I sit on this committee, and I don't want to waste my time looking at a report with no data in it. So I think what we need to do is actually give time for the operational capacity to come forward. The rollout had a lot of press coverage, and I think we need to look at it from a more professional internal background and get the right data, where it's gone right, where it's gone wrong, not just where it's gone wrong. It has gone right in certain areas. And for that, it does need time. It needs data to be collected after that period of time. It needs to be accurate data that's gone through the internal process of officers. So I don't think we're rushing it into this committee at all.
Councillor Cross.
Yeah, I think the report would require some data. We need 3 months or so before we could consider it.
Okay. Does that seem to be the consensus that we'll get some data so that we can actually look at? Councillor Bullen.
I was going to say, Councillor Chanter did send me an even good comment about blue bags. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, I'm sure we could. So we're good with that then, yes? Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. I know it went through cabinet the other day, the statement around improving biodiversity in the district. It sounds like a great idea. Do we think that's something that we'd like to deal with at this committee, or my view would be actually we could potentially ask the climate change task group to look into that as well, or potentially bring it here. But I think that's something that might want to be on. Again, that's end of this civic year to allow the plan to come forwards. But I think it's something
That's your task group. I think.
Yeah,
Do you
I
want to
think
take
we're looking at it's all part of the holistic approach, so.
that? Okay, we'll let the task group take that on board. Yeah, good suggestion. Yeah. Anything else in relation to the work programme? Anybody on the board plan? We're good with all that. Yeah. I think now we're moving into item 10 is the exclusion of public and press. And then we're going